Before I answer the title question, I have to answer another one to set the groundwork. What does it mean to waste a character? I would say that this happens either when a character is underdeveloped and one-dimensional, or if they fall short of their potential. If they're given growth and development, given significant setup, but that setup isn't paid off in a satisfying way. After I first watched Andor, I felt that Syril Karn fell a little bit into both categories. I absolutely loved his development in the first arc, but after that it seemed like he didn't really go anywhere. Syril was just kind of there in the background, occasionally popping in to eat Cocoa Puffs or obsess over Cassian. His arc felt like it was cut short. He was a fleshed out and fully realized character in the initial story arc, but then got sidelined without much change in his character after his failure on Ferrix, and that seemed a waste to me. At least, that's how I felt upon first viewing. But I decided to take a second, closer look to see if my initial reaction was justified, or if Syril did live up to his potential in ways I missed the first time around. The creators of Andor are clearly intentional and purposeful with their story decisions, so I'm hesitant to call out their character work for any perceived wrongdoing without giving it a thorough analysis. To that end, let's break down Syril's arc. I will, of course, start at the very beginning. I hear it's a very good place to start. Syril's character work in the first episode is nothing short of excellent. His introductory scene with the Chief Inspector brilliantly shows his wholehearted dedication to his job without having to state it outright. His rigid posture and form-fitting uniform contrast with the relaxed and loose posture and uniform of his boss. Syril is decidedly not on board with the Chief Inspector's plan to juke the stats and dismiss the murders as an accident, showing not only his sense of ethical duty, but also his naivete and lack of experience in the world of law enforcement. If you don't really get what I'm referring to, go watch The Wire. This is our first sign that Syril doesn't really understand the system inside of which he works. As far as he is concerned, he is simply investigating a murder and chasing down a suspect, and he is willing to disobey orders to do what he believes is right. In just about any other show, a cop with this attitude would earn the admiration of the audience. But Syril works for an arm of the Third Galactic Reich and happens to be chasing our protagonist, so sympathy is a bit harder to come by. The audience would normally, for example, applaud his initiative as he steels himself to buck his superior's commands and consult the air traffic controller to identify any anomalies that could be his suspect's ship. Another moment of beautiful show-don't-tell storytelling, by the way, and excellent acting on top of that. Syril's facial expressions and body language perfectly convey his hesitance and then his eventual resolve as he commits to following his instincts and breaking protocol. This scene and his subsequent ones set Syril up as a dedicated, competent investigator. His enthusiasm is only matched by that of Sergeant Mosk, in whom Syril finally finds a kindred spirit who not only agrees with his attitude, but also outright encourages his ambitious full-measure methods.
Best way to keep the blade sharp is to use it.
Syril appears filled with smug self-satisfaction as Mosk commends his willingness to wield the hammer of justice with a heavy hand, indicating his dangerous commitment to his ideology. The deputy inspector clearly feels proud of himself, having so quickly identified a suspect and had assembled a plan to apprehend him. This is a subtly important moment that we would do well to remember later. A young, confident detective who is intimately familiar with proper investigative procedure and capable of executing it to the letter, Syril is also vastly out of his depth. His trite, soft-spoken, stumbling speech given to the strike team displays how ill at ease he truly is, how his leadership and experience is wearing at his mind. Again, great moment of natural storytelling. No one needs to tell us that this is Cyril's first time in the field. We can see it in his face and hear it in his tone as he fails miserably to give anything resembling an inspiring speech.
Best of luck to us all.
When his team arrives on Ferrix, then, Syril is established as an enthusiastic, even zealous, lawman whose capable nature causes him to overextend and get in well over his head. That is all set up for the third episode's payoff, in which Syril basically does nothing. He defers to Mosk at every turn, most often not even attempting to exert any sort of leadership. Now, obviously, as a rookie officer, he would be wise to consult with his experienced sergeant, but Syril barely even attempts to do that. When things start to go south, he simply has no idea what to do.
We just gonna stand here?
And the disastrous results cause him to completely freeze up. Whether or not he is tactically to blame, it was his decision to launch this mission, confident in his ability to bring Cassian in, despite orders to the contrary, and so he will bear the brunt of the inevitable fallout. His hubris and his underestimation of his enemy caused his downfall. Honestly, if they had wrapped up his story there, I probably would have been satisfied. Syril was a well-written, well-acted, fleshed-out character that helped introduce us to Andor's Imperial system, and who had a fulfilling setup and payoff. It was a short character arc, but it was an excellent one. However, it didn't end there. Since the Empire at large doesn't execute for mere incompetence, Syril is simply fired instead of facing a firing squad, and so his arc continues. This is where I began to feel that the show was underutilizing Syril. In episode 4, he has 3 full minutes of screen time, and yet only says a single word.
Mother.
In episode 5, his only scenes are in his mother's apartment, conversing, arguing, with her about the past few years, family matters, and his career. These scenes aren't bad, mind you. The dialogue and the acting are excellent. But I was so used to Syril being at the center of the plot, and I really enjoyed him being there, so I felt thrown off. After reflection and a rewatch, though, I do appreciate these scenes more. They provide some quality character building as we witness Syril's home life. His tempestuous relationship with his mother, who is solely focused on his career prospects and doesn't seem to give a rat's ass that he almost got blown up, helps us understand his obsessive nature. As put off by her as he may be, Syril is clearly influenced by his mother's single-mindedness, but unlike her, he is not ready to move on from his past failure. So he struggles to fit in, as symbolized by his brown suit, in a building that is uniformly gray and occupied by employees clad in like manner. Syril is used to standing out, used to that being an unequivocally good thing.
Have you modified your uniform?
Perhaps slightly. Pockets piping and some light tailoring.
An asset that would advance his career. His shift back to civilian life is sudden and jarring, and he understandably isn't emotionally recovered from his failure on Ferrix. All of that is genuinely interesting, more so than I gave it credit for on my first watch, but it's not as compelling as was his character development in the first few episodes, largely due to its increased distance from the main plot. Syril's role in said plot is essentially taken up by Dedra Miro. In a way, Syril serves as a springboard for the introduction of Dedra's character. Where he is smart, competent, driven, but also inexperienced and rash, she is equally intelligent, capable, and motivated, but the ISB officer has her head set more squarely on her shoulders. She is not one to impulsively buck protocol or rush into a situation for which she is not prepared. We can imagine that Syril is who Dedra was 10 years earlier, except that she didn't get anyone killed due to incompetence, and thus has continued her career and become even more devoted to the Empire she serves. I don't doubt that Syril can see this as well. When he is questioned by Dedra, he makes every attempt to inject himself into the investigation, even though he really does have nothing to offer by way of additional information.
What's not in here?
Gray cloak, green, dark boots.
I didn't get a good look.
He then later tries to refer to that encounter as a conversation, putting himself on equal ground with Dedra in his mind, and she assures him that that was absolutely not the case.
That wasn't a conversation. You were brought in for questioning.
Syril and Dedra's infamous encounter outside ISB headquarters, where it's revealed that the former deputy inspector has been lurking in hopes of encountering Dedra, serves not so much to show his obsession with her, but rather his obsession with his own failure and his compulsive need to regain the life he lost. Syril doesn't seem to be stalking Dedra because he's attracted to her, but rather because he wants to be her. The ISB lieutenant represents who Syril could have become if he had pursued his career with more care and forethought. After months of toiling away in a drab, uniform government office with nothing to show for what little investigation he could muster, Syril is suddenly thrust face to face with someone who has the life he so covets. So I would consider this scene, uncomfortable though it may be, a satisfying payoff for the development of Syril's character since the Ferrix incident. His continued obsession with Andor and his single-mindedness, likely driven at least in part by his mother's singular focus on his career, converge as he expresses his sense that life is not worth living unless he is able to be a part of the pursuit of justice. Perhaps my deranged belief that there was something better for me fated in the future was a dream worth clinging to, he tells Dedra, as he prevents her from walking away by clinging to her arm. In Dedra, Syril sees his salvation, because he sees who he wants to be, someone who knows the path to that only life that he considers worth living. It's tempting to praise his tenacity and his unwavering dedication to keep pushing forward, but persistence is only truly virtuous when it's rightly ordered, and in this case, it isn't. It's driven by Cyril's pride, which is worthy of condemnation. Syril doesn't appear to take much time for self-reflection to learn from his mistakes. He tells anyone who will listen that he intends to
Clear my name and have my record expunged.
When he reads the report on the Ferrex incident, he calls out
The total lack of imperial authority on Ferrex,
and
criminal negligence of my commanding officer
as missing from said report. Syril sees himself as a victim, as a loyal servant of the Empire who was only doing his duty when he was ambushed by Andor's
Organized local cadre of accomplices.
which doesn't exist. Syril blames everyone but himself for the deaths of his men on Ferrex and for Andor's escape. At no point does he acknowledge that it was his lack of experience and leadership, his overly eager ambition, his willingness to disobey orders and throw caution to the wind that got people killed. It's not that Syril wants to redeem himself exactly, but more that he wants to prove himself, to prove that he was right all along.
I was a good deputy inspector.
That was very good.
His relentlessness pushes him to pursue Andor even when he has no real leads or resources. And finally to travel to Ferrex on the vague hope that he might find Andor there during Marva's funeral. What exactly did he think he would accomplish? It's hard to say, but his appearance on Ferrex firmly drives home the point that this is all that matters to Syril. His pride will not abide his failure. He is willing to go to any lengths to reclaim his honor. It seems more luck than anything that he is able to rescue Dedra during the riot. Actually, this is where I have a small bone to pick with the show. Dedra is getting grabbed and held by several individuals, and then suddenly Syril picks up her blaster and shepherds her out of the fray at gunpoint, supposedly acting in a rebellious manner, but it's not shown what happened to all those people who were attacking Dedra. You had an ISB officer in your clutches. Surely you wouldn't just let her go because someone you've never seen before grabs her blaster and threatens her with it, right? No show is perfect. Anyhow, Syril then tells Dedra, you don't have to, when she states,
I should say thank you.
Syril's subtext here is, that wasn't a favor, that was my duty, I belong here. He is asserting that he is a loyal servant to the Empire, one who is worthy of far more than a desk job in the Department of Fuel Purity. Will he get what he so badly desires in Season 2? We'll have to wait and see, but I would guess he does. So, after revisiting Syril's arc, do I still think his character's potential was wasted? No. Yes, his place in the plot and the pace of his character work are significantly downgraded. As I said earlier, he serves as something of a springboard for Dedra's character, as she is the realization of career potential in a young corporate inspector. When she replaces him, Syril goes from driving the plot forward to being on the outside looking in, his actions having little if any effect on the story's progression. His obsession with Andor gets established in the early episodes and then doesn't change much in the final 9. However, the gradual, subtle, and nuanced character work that I've described here makes up for that. The writers didn't simply sideline Syril to a life of mint Cocoa Puffs, blue raspberry milk, and bureaucratic tedium. They explored the effects failure would have on the mind of a competent, ambitious, and most importantly, proud member of the Empire. Where the first 3 episodes provided a solid arc for Syril, an excellent setup and payoff that was hard-hitting and carried significant narrative weight, the rest of the show took its time rebuilding the former inspector, showing him navigating the fallout of the catastrophe on Ferrex, and choosing not to learn or grow from his mistakes, but rather to double down on his commitment and zeal for what he believes to be justice. All of that is largely setup. His arc is far from complete, and I anticipate we will get the payoff for it in the second season. If I'm remotely right about that, then no, Syril's development won't be a waste at all. Season 2 probably won't go the way I think, and I'm all the happier for that. I love being surprised, and I trust the creators of Andor to surprise me in a satisfying way. So, what did you think of Syril's arc, or rather his first and second arcs? Did you feel like he was sidelined and underutilized, or do you think the show delivered just the right amount of blue milk breakfast scenes? Let me know down below, and thank you so much for watching.